Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And as a conclusion from where we stopped actually last class, we presented the first a property entity considered to be a security approach to apply on a transaction that it is taking care of transmitting or retrieving data from transmitting a query, SQL query, a list of queries, and or requesting or delivering or reading data from the backend solution to the front-end solution. So those properties, they are the asset properties. We explained one by one, and I believe that they are clear for you. And if you have any questions, write them up. Remember that they are four. This context of asset, it's four properties to be either altogether applied and respected, or the four of them, they have been failed. Means you cannot say that the three, for example, asset, consistency, and isolation, they are applied, and only durability is not guaranteed. So the transaction can be considered secured. No. Actually, regardless of the level, because without, remember, just I told you, and again I insist on the theory and the definition says that the transaction might happen and might be fulfilled and finalized without the refer to the asset adoption. Means without saying that the four properties, the asset, they are adopted or not, the transaction might run. So without the asset, the transaction, the functionality can be guaranteed. Yet the security level, the information assurance, without the asset cannot be guaranteed. You cannot say the transaction is secure. You cannot confirm. And information assurance to guarantee that the data is exactly what has been submitted to the server, or it's exactly what the server is delivering to us in return. We cannot guarantee that without setting up the asset properties. Great. Beside of the transaction properties, the atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability, there are actually admittance levels that the transaction has to go through in order to say yes, the transaction has been fulfilled. Otherwise, an interception, a simple interception in between, might cancel all the work and cause the server to not serve end users and cannot reply or do not reply for a reason or another. The transaction modes, it's a context of admitting or let's say canceling the transaction. I may use the word cancel, but later on we use the word rollback. This context here, it is as if telling the service provider, which is the server here, which is the SQL server at the end of the day, yes, admit and do execute the queries we submit to you, whether to insert, to update, or to retrieve, or the DML that you might, or even the DDL that you might deliver through a transaction. So the transaction modes is to specify how to make the system or the SQL server specifically act towards the transaction, because we might retrieve for a preview only and we cancel at the end of the day. So we just keep sending queries in a serialized mode, and those queries, they are going to be executed by the SQL server. And at the end, no, we cancel, select, insert, and then after we cancel. The transaction modes here will specify to the server either to admit or no. To the variety of modes, 4 of them they are mentioned in front of us here. The auto commit, the explicit, and the implicit. They are modes via which the server can read the transaction and admit all the queries that the transaction holds. Auto commit and commit and implicitly. Sorry, auto commit and explicit. They actually to make the server act by himself, and the implicit is to tell the manually the server yes admit save in this context. Batch scope here now. Actually, we talk about multi requests, and we will see some constraints. But in all cases, we are dealing with the server to admit a transaction, whatever the number of the queries that the transaction is home. One query, 2 queries, 3 queries, whatever the number. At the end, we have to tell the server, yes, do an auto commit, do an implicit commit, no, explicitly commit. We'll see if we have a nested transaction, and we see actually the constraints. But in all cases, there have to be an indication to tell the server how to admit a transaction. This is nominated here, given the title transaction mode. Any transaction we give, it has to have a mode in order to have the server understand and admit or cancel, roll back the process. Transaction mode. A simple explanation of what are the transaction modes. And now to commit transaction, actually, it's a process to help the server do an admission of a transaction, but it holds individual statements as transactions. What does it mean? It means we just send a simple select. This is a transaction. We send a simple insert. We send a simple update. So a transaction holds only one statement. Look, the server will go after an auto commitment here. Means whatever you ask as a singular query. By default, you go for an auto commit. This first mode is successful with individual statements. Means the server, once he receives a transaction with one statement, an individual statement, he will do an auto commit. He will execute and commit that by himself. It's an auto action. There are statements and there are syntax for that. The explicit transaction, another view. Here, actually, the server has to be able to find a clear indicator whether to accept, to admit, to commit, or not. A transaction has to have a start, has to have an end, and has to have a mode at the end. Mainly, there are 2 keywords. Commit, here, like this one. Commit exactly. Or roll back. Commit means he will execute and save. Roll back. The level he reached, he will cancel and come back to the prior level. What was the prior state? He will come back to that point, to that save point. It is actually because of the keywords here, whether to save using the commit, or whether to cancel using the rollback word. They are keywords, those two. Commit, it is for admission. Rollback is for cancellation. Third mode, actually here, it's an implicit. It means actually you are going to set the server to admit as if he's going to do it an auto commit. But here, either an auto commit or an auto rollback. We said the server understand that the transaction, when once terminated, there have to be a commit, or there have to be a rollback. So the implicit, it's also an indicator similar to this explicit, but to be adjusted for all transactions, let's say, or for a bulk of transactions, group of transactions, to make the server each time understand each transaction will be terminated whether with a commit or a rollback. Commit, rollback, commit, rollback, they are statements. Means they are a full command. When I just write commit, I'm ordering the server to do something. It's a statement. The same way, if I ask rollback and semicolon, it's a command also, and I'm asking the server to do a complete task. It's a command, it's an order. The server will admit only. As per the definition of the transaction, we knew and we passed through actually a variety of transactions. And 100% you know that the transaction is not only to pass a single and individual statement to the server. We take the example of the ATM machine we explained last class. And that actually transaction, we had 4 statements. Let me come back there. Let me come back to that example only. We find it. Good. Here it is. Here is the simple explanation of the transaction. There have to be a checkup of the account validity. There have to be a check of the balance available in the account. Also, there have to be an orders and cash withdrawal. Then after an update to the account, to the already validated account. How many queries here? Clearly, we are having 4, and there have to be. There might be other instructions hidden. So they are 4. Here clearly we are identifying 4 queries. They have to accomplish one transaction. It's one transaction. So 4 queries for one transaction. What does it mean? It means if we talk about the asset, those 4, whether to succeed together or to fail together. Whether to succeed together or fail together. In the sense of, we see them all together being running or not. When we go to the transaction modes, we are having a mode via which we can admit multiple actually result sets. What does it mean? It means we can pass a transaction that can give more than one result. One task, one same transaction. What does it mean? It means the same ATM machine example, when we check the account validity, there has to be an outcome. It will tell me actually, yes, validated, you are Fulan, it gives me my name, my ID. This is the first outcome. It's a select, isn't it? It's a select, it's a query to be transmitted. Then, to check my balance, it's another select. I'm asking for 100 riyal. If I do have enough balance, it is a query to be submitted to the server, to the database, where my account is saved, and it will check. It will check if my balance is enough or not. And based on the checkup, there will be another output, multiple result sets. Here we talk about multiple active result sets, MAS shortcut. What is it? It is just a list of outcomes due to a group of queries along of one transaction, one unique, one individual transaction that holds a list of active and queries with outcome. Something like this. We are nominating them as MAS. Those type of processes that are actually covered by one transaction. We are giving them a specific mode for admission or for cancellation. We are saying batch scoped. Batch scoped here. It is actually a batch of queries to be admitted and rolled back again and again along and across the transaction. Means from within the transaction, we are going to have commit commands in plural and rollback commands in plural as much as the query requires. Actually, the transaction or the process. We might have 2 commits, we might have 3 commits, we might have 1 commit and 1 rollback. It depends on what? On the active queries running, the requests the server is executed. Sometimes we need to roll back a process if a condition happens. Sometimes we need to commit from within the transaction and we terminate. So there is more than one condition to happen from within the transaction itself. Thus, the commitment and the rollback, it is not to be happening only at the end of the transaction. The SQL server will not admit commit or rollback only at the end of the transaction. No, he might do that, and the transaction is still going on. So the auto batch, the batch scope of the transaction mode is to push the server, the SQL server, understand that there is a commit from within the transaction itself, and there is a rollback also if needed from within the transaction itself. More than one commit, more than one rollback. It depends on the process. There is no technical specificities here. It just help us to use the commit more than one time if needed, and the rollback more than one time if needed also. Usually within one transaction, an individual transaction here. This batch scoped mode. Any questions? Hey, any questions? Okay. Read here or not? Okay. The batch scope we will define it now. We said that it helps us to make a commit or a rollback more than one time in the value of one individual transaction. There is one feature that it is nominated save point. Save point. A save point. Actually, it is one of the technical approaches that we can refer to in order to, for example, we want to refer to that point across the run of the transaction. For example, we're going to do one query, two query, three queries. If you want to roll back, to which point we are going to roll back? Are we going to cancel everything? Or are we going to cancel a specific part? So to indicate points that the server would use to either roll back or commit, we use the save point indicators. We'll see an example in a while. So save points, they are time frame indicators that the server, here we talk about the SQL server, would refer to in order to make either a commitment in our context or a rollback. It is one of the features to help in the accomplishment of the transaction modes or the adoption of the transaction modes. The save points, they are not things that we can. They are not things that we can do when we talk about the mass transactions. What does mean mass transactions? Means a transaction that they are described to be multi-active result sets transactions. Means transactions that they are having more than one request. It's not more than one query, one process. Let's say means we are going to do a simple insert. So we have three inserts. This is not a multiple outside output active result set. So this is just a list of queries. But when we have two connections, I am sending a query. User number 2 is sending a query to the same entity using the same features. Which one is going to be executed? So both of them, they have to be executed. We have two requests here. Can we do a save point in such context? No, because we have two different requests, multiple active result sets. They are unable to provide the save points to be utilized, but they are able to refer to the batch scope transaction modes. Conclusion, and I repeat, batch scope transactions is a mode that we can refer to in order to whether commit or roll back more than one time during the life cycle of the given transaction, the individual transaction. So, whether we are going to commit more than one time or roll back more than one time depends on the scenario usually. If you are going to do it once, it's okay. If you are going to do it 2 or 3 or 4 times, or 100 times, if the program is too long, absolutely we can. But the context here is that you have to understand the commit is required or not, or the rollback is required or not. After that, if you're going, for example, to refer to more than one rollback or even one rollback, the rollback can be specified to cancel everything, the full transaction, or cancel partially. Just you are going to cancel one query, 2 queries. You are going to cancel only the insert queries, or you are going to cancel the select queries. So this way you have to specify which part is going to be rolled back. We have to use save points. The save points is a technique via which we specify time frame points indicators that server at point can refer to for a specific task, like the example of running back. When the transaction is under the mass concept, what is mass? Multiple active result sets query, transaction, the same points cannot be utilized. They are not to be utilized. No, they are not enhanced. This feature is not enhanced. Let's see an example of a non-batch scope, non-mass transaction. Let me change the view. Great. Let me maximize a little bit. Okay, let me change the color.
وتعالى حيث لا يحتسب لك سر.
طيب. Are you with me?
Yes, Mr.
Okay. We couldn't.
Yes?
اعترف وكنت.
You.
The non-mass transaction in this example here, what does it mean actually? We are able to do a rollback and we are able to use save points according to the definition we saw. Since it is non-mass, we can use save points. And this is the example. It's a simple transaction. We are having a start, a begin here. And in between, we are actually, first of all, we are making select. It's a simple list of queries. It's not a request with a different connection with different ID. Simple queries. Here we are creating a first save point. A first save point. Let me change the color. And I'm going to change the size also. Okay. Yeah. Save point. The word save point is user defined, but the save tran, it's a keyword. Save tran transaction, it's a keyword. Good. So here we are saving a point and the time. Later on, we can refer to where we did here. We are just we continue the process. Insert, select. No, now we want to cancel. Here it is a rollback. Here we are making a rollback. Rollback to where? To the same save point. Save point 1. It is the same. It is the same save point. We continue. Insert, select. At the end, we are making a commit. At the end, we are making a commit. No more, no less. So this way, we are able to use here actually this is explicit mode. Explicit mode, why? Because we are explicitly specifying the commit, And explicitly we are specifying the rollback. Okay, those two, they are explicitly mentioned to the transaction, but more than one, yes. And we are able to use the save points. So this is a non-mass transaction. Mass means multiple active result sets based transaction that does not have two requests or more at the same time. It's just one request with more than one query, multiple queries. Any questions, please? Okay. The other example. Okay. The other example. The other example here, we are just discussing the same context: the mass and the scope batched or the batch scoped transaction. See here, we are having a connection string, and we are having a usability of the string. A first command given a specific indicator, command 1, and a second command which is actually given the command 2. Let me maximize the font. Yeah, so all of this is available in our book. I'm just making actually a preview here in those slides, but all of the thing is in our book. This time here, we are passing two queries, command 1 and command 2. We cannot roll back because why? Because once we execute later on, which one we are going to admit? Is it the command 2 or the command 1 or both? Which one to commit or to roll back? We cannot, because both of them, they have to execute, and separately they have to be done. We cannot mix the process of the command 1 with the command or the process of the command 2. Thus, separately they have to be set, even if they have outputs or they don't have outputs, only a process like the update or the insert. So thus, only at the end we have to commit. So here we have to commit at the end only. This commitment is for all. For whom? For the transaction Tron. We specified it to be the name Tron. Let me show you the color. Yes, Tron, which is the name of the transaction we created earlier. Let me find it. Whatever. So here in this example, we are having two requests. Each has to have its execution, and those two requests is on a one transaction. It's not two transactions. So one transaction to execute both, and if to fail both. To roll both. Roll back. Thus, the save points, they are not to be found in any place. Which process to cancel? If they are both of them running simultaneously, thus we cannot. In real plane, we cannot generate a save point. Thus, in this conclusion, a mass transaction cannot go with a batch scoped, cannot generate save points. It's not a context of save points, but it's not a context of batch scope modes, but save points. It means that during the lifetime of the transaction, we cannot cancel or we cannot roll back. It has to be done at the end. Means either implicitly or explicitly to be set. The mode of the mass transactions, whether to be implicit or explicit. Any questions, please? If you hear your name, please say yes. I'll take the attendance.